Okay, we'll get started in just a little bit. Just wanted to give our attendees some time to enter the webinar. Welcome to the Stony Brook Schools virtual open house. My name is Yuri Francis, and I serve as the Director of Enrollment Management. And this is my 6th year at the Brook. I'm so glad that you could join us this evening. And I know for some of our guests, it may be morning where you live. So good morning to you. Tonight's event is the 3rd virtual open house in our series. There will be 2 more events after this one, and the focus for this open house will be spirituality, character, and leadership. Now, before we review the agenda, I want to take a few minutes to show you our school video.
Choose one: wisdom, imagination. Both are valuable. Both are things we want our generation to have. But sometimes we find ourselves splitting the world into binary choices, one or the other, thinking we have to choose between being grounded or taking flight, not realizing that wisdom and imagination need each other. For imagination without wisdom can be impulsive, and wisdom without imagination quickly becomes dry. So what happens when education cultivates both equally? When we follow the model of a creator who both imagined form out of void and put wisdom into words? The Stony Brook School believes that when wisdom meets imagination, it produces great vision. And the world needs great vision. Innovation is happening so quickly today that it keeps outpacing itself, and we don't always have the eyes to see whether this is good. Our values get shaped by what's expedient instead of what's true. We want to be a generation of leaders with the vision to see the difference and the character to see beyond.
I'm learning to see beyond my own needs to how I can serve others.
I'm learning to see beyond just taking classes to the opportunity of finding new passions.
I see leadership as an opportunity to love people and to help them grow.
I don't know what's going to happen. I don't know what job I'm going to have in the future, but I know that whatever's coming, I'm going to be confident and ready for it.
I'm learning to see beyond answers to the questions behind them.
I'm learning to see beyond my own culture to a bigger understanding of the world.
I want to help my students to see beyond even college and to see 10 or 15 years into the future into who they can be.
At Stony Brook, we're learning to bring wisdom and imagination together to create great vision. Because at the core, vision is an act of faith, requiring both wisdom to know the greatness of God and imagination to be open to His calling. Vision that puts conviction into motion and gives structure to a dream, that both chases and stands ground, that develops both the skill sets and mindsets for jobs that don't exist yet. Vision that accelerates, vision that serves. So, if we ever think we have to choose just one, wisdom, imagination, we will have the vision to see beyond. Choose one: wisdom.
This evening, you are in for a real treat as we have a combination of faculty and student speakers. First, you'll hear from 2 members of the faculty, Joshua Crane, our head of school, and Mark Tejan, our chaplain and chair of the Bible department. Next up, you will hear from 2 of our amazing students, Tiffany and Caroline. Later in the open house, you will have an opportunity to ask questions about what spirituality, character, and leadership looks like at the Stony Brook School. And at the end of the program, my colleague, Sharice Welsh, will join me in answering questions about the application process. And now here are the expectations for this event. By now, you probably have noticed that both your camera and microphone are turned off. This will help our speakers avoid any distractions. During the virtual open house, we do encourage you to type your questions using the Q&A button at the bottom of your screen. And if you're not seeing the Q&A button, all you need to do is just click on the three small buttons at the bottom right of your screen. And we will try our best to address all of your questions. But we do ask, and please note that the focus of this Q&A session will be about spirituality, character, and leadership. And we will also share the recording of this open house on the school website. And now I have the pleasure of turning the program over to our head of school, Josh Crane.
Well, thank you, Yuri, and greetings to all of you this evening or morning, wherever you may be. We're grateful that you've taken the time to spend it with us here this evening. And as Yuri mentioned, I hope we've got a good lineup for you. I do believe that we do. And so when we're talking about issues of spirituality, character, and leadership, we're going right to the heart of our school. Every school has a goal, has an aim, has a mission statement. Ours is there before you on the slide as I'm speaking. But we really want to kind of look under the hood tonight and show you the engine that drives the Stony Brook School. It is our commitment to faith and how that faith works itself out in our pursuit of character. And character will inevitably be manifested in our leadership. So all these things go together tonight. And we're excited to be able to share them with you. And of course, the most important part perhaps of tonight is actually hearing from two of our student leaders who will talk about their experience and what it's like. We certainly find that to be probably the most valuable portion of the evening is actually hearing from our student leaders. So you'll get a chance to do that in a minute. But what I want to do now is introduce Dr. Mark Tejan, who is in his 7th year of leadership here at the Stony Brook School. He's a PhD from Princeton Seminary, and he will be talking to you about our approach to spiritual life here at the Stony Brook School. Dr. Tejan.
Well, hi, everyone. It's a pleasure to be able to speak with you this evening, and thank you, Mr. Crane. So yeah, this is my 7th year at Stony Brook, and just tell you a little bit about my background so maybe it would help you see my approach to leading spiritual life at Stony Brook. Prior to coming to Stony Brook, I was in the college university world. I was a college professor for 9 years. And my job there was to teach equal parts philosophy and religion. And that's because my graduate degrees, I have one in theology and one in philosophy. And so my approach to Stony Brook, one of the things that attracted me to Stony Brook was because on the one hand, it had a strong faith commitment, which I have myself. But on the other hand, it was a place where faith was encouraged to think. And so my doctorate is in fact in philosophy, and I love thinking, and I love argument, and I love encouraging students to think hard about issues related to faith. And one of the reasons that my family and I wanted to come to Stony Brook, one was because of the student population being international, being from all over the world. And that's a really wonderful environment to raise children in. But another was because even though Stony Brook has a strong faith commitment, we encourage students from all backgrounds, other religious commitments or no religious commitment, to come and join us here. And I value that deeply, and I'm so happy to be here. So in terms of my own objectives, I'm going to share 3 things that I see as sort of goals for spiritual life. And the first is that I hope for us to instruct students in faith. So we do, unlike a school that's not religious in nature, we do have courses specifically in Bible. And sometimes those courses are simply Bible themselves, all by themselves. And then in other senses, the Bible is studied in the context of history or of literature. I was talking to a friend of mine who is a professor at NYU recently in New York City. And he remarked to me, he is a person without a faith commitment, but he remarked that his students who come having studied religious texts tend to read better in his English classes than those who don't, because they've been challenged to do really hard interpretation. And so one of the goals of our education in Bible here is to instruct students in faith and to learn how to read a text and to have conversations about a text that has been so formative in the history of ideas. The second goal that we have in spiritual life is to challenge faith. And so we have students, as I said, and as you know, who come here with because it's a Christian school and they come with deep Christian faith. And then we have students who come who maybe they were raised in a Christian culture, but it's not really for them. And then others from other faiths and no faith. And one of my joys is I get to teach a senior class called Faith and Culture. And in that class, I tell my students the first day, hey, if you're a Christian, I don't take it easy on you. In fact, I might take it harder on you, because I want you, whether you're a Christian or a Jew or an atheist or agnostic, I want you to reflect deeply, not just on what you believe, but why you believe what you believe. And so the challenge is to every student. The issues that come up with regard to religion and faith are some of the most important, pressing, and deep questions that you can imagine. And so it's a real priority for us here to challenge our assumptions, challenge our beliefs, and so on. And then the third goal of mine in spiritual life is to nurture faith. And so some students do choose Stony Brook because they believe in God and they think God is an important part of their life, and they want to know how they can know God better and how they can follow God in their life. And of course, we want to provide an environment for those kinds of students as well to grow in their faith. And that brings me to some of the different spiritual life activities that we have here at Stony Brook. And so this slide shows some images of students at Stony Brook doing all sorts of different things. And so one of the most favorite activities, I think, on a regular basis, a weekly basis, is our youth group. And it's run largely by students. They lead music a lot of times. They will speak. Last night they did a panel on what they think about religious community and faith community. And we get a good mix of students from all over the world, both students who are day students and students who are boarding students who attend Driven. And that's every Tuesday evening at 7 o'clock. We also offer Bible studies, which occur during a dinner time hour usually. And we take up particular books of the Bible. Sometimes we take up topics. Sometimes we ask questions like, how do I understand justice in the world in light of, you might say, the suffering of so many people? Deep things like that. And believe it or not, we have dozens of students. I think there are 30 or 40 students who signed up for Bible studies this current trimester. And then we also offer mission trips occasionally. COVID obviously has given us a challenge with travel, but prior to that, we sent students to France. We've sent students to Albania and other places to do service, to get to know the people of those lands and where there are opportunities to serve others to do so. And there are a few more activities as well that are part of our regular rhythm. The first of those is chapel. Now, of all the things, all the activities on these lists, chapel is the only one that's actually required. So chapel for all students is every Wednesday. If you are a boarding student, you also will attend a Sunday chapel. And chapel's tends to be a simple religious service where we have a message and we often have music. And that meets, like I said, every week. We also have an annual retreat, which I don't know, we could take a survey if we wanted to, but I think most students will say this retreat, which is every January up in New Hampshire, tends to be one of the most fun events. It has a spiritual emphasis, but it's also focused on fun and just sort of getting out of the campus and up to a snowy place and doing some sledding and just having a good time together. And then finally, we offer periodic opportunities to sing together, to worship, or to pray, to read scripture, simply to hang out, but different kinds of activities that folks who have religious faith would feel edified by. And so much of religious life at Stony Brook is in fact voluntary. if you're someone who comes from a different perspective as far as religion goes, if Christianity is not your background, I hope that you get a clear sense that we are as happy for you to come as we are for Christian families to come. Students are not forced to have religion here. There's no coercion. We simply challenge, as I said earlier, we challenge all students to think about some of the deep questions of life. And of course, many of those questions happen to be religious. So that's all I have to say. I'm so glad to be able to speak to you. And I'm going to turn it back to Mr. Crane, who's going to talk about leadership and character development.
Great. Thank you, Mark. So if you've investigated, looked at us, you will know that our motto is character before career. Self-explanatory, but certainly a way of life. We place a great emphasis, in fact, I'd say it's the most important thing that we do, is the character formation of our students. Because as parents and educators, we certainly need to reckon with the reality that our culture, often embodied in the phones that are in our pockets, are deforming character. And our goal is, in the face of that, in the face of pressures that are out there, is to really form character. And I want to talk just a little bit about how we do that, how our program is set up to form character in young people. When we think about a model and an example, we are looking to the model of Jesus Christ as the kind of character that we want to see replicated and embodied in our young people. A man who was willing to, whose love was so great, he was willing to die for his enemies. It's that kind of extent of character that we want to see formed in our students. So let me share with you just a little bit about how that happens here on our campus. So the first thing I'd point to is our curriculum, which every curriculum has a guide or has a map, a path that it's seeking to follow and lead one down. And ours is informed by 7 virtues, 7 great virtues that we take on a sequential basis year by year and infuse them and weave them into the curriculum of a particular grade. So for example, in 7th grade, they're studying courage. They'll read The Hobbit, which is all about courage. Our English books are selected to support the virtues that students are studying in their grades, either by picking exemplars of those virtues or the foil, the counter to those virtues, and which ultimately highlight the beauty of the virtues when you're seeing the opposite of them. But just again, courage in 7th grade, temperance in 8th grade, justice is 9th grade, 10th grade is wisdom, 11th grade is love, 12th grade is hope, and then faith is woven throughout, as Dr. Tijan had spoken about. And so this is kind of what the heart of what we're trying to teach young people to embrace and see as vital to their development. It's not just in English class where that'll happen. So for example, in biology in 9th grade, we have which is all of the 9th grade is about justice. That's the virtue for that grade. Our biology teacher does a session on eugenics and talks about the injustice that has been perpetuated in this world and as it exists now. And so it is a chance for us to not just have one class, but really kind of have a theme. Each year has a theme, and that's the way in which we really see it play out curricularly. We also believe that it's really hard to form character if you don't know who you are as a person, if you don't know what your gifts and your talents and your interests may be, your personality as it's forming as a young person. I think it's so important for us to really help young people understand and discover the talents and the gifts and the kind of the native wiring, so to speak. What's in there? What are the talents and gifts that have been deposited in young people? And so we have a number of inventories that we do, particularly through our college process. Students take something that's called U-Science, which really kind of unpacks and gives them insight into some of the gifts and talents that they have that will inevitably help them in their college selection process, but also give them insight into who they are. Also, a part of discovering yourself is being known and living in community. Each one of our students has an advisor that will follow him or her throughout their Stony Brook career. That person is not just focused on their academics, but on their total life here at Stony Brook, whether that's in the arts or in athletics or academics or in the dorm. Our advisors are trained to make sure that students are progressing and to be in relationship with them and be a sounding board and really have that person on campus who knows you, who's invested in you, and helps you in this process of self-discovery. Daily habits, I mean, we've really set up our program. You get a PhD in time management in many ways here. We ask a lot of our students who tend to procrastinate super long or aren't good at time management often find that the system itself will help them with those issues because we do seek to keep a good pace here. And we really hope that children, we really kind of walk alongside them to do this, but we really see them be able to begin to prioritize as they meet the demands and the needs of the schedule and the requirements here. It is a built-in way of kind of sharpening some of those dull edges that may exist. And we see that as being very beneficial. The common testimony that you will hear from our students as they graduate and go on to college is that, wow, I was really prepared for college. I knew how to manage my time. I knew what to prioritize. I knew what to put down. I knew when to have leisure, when to work. This environment really gives them that kind of opportunity to shape those habits that will inevitably benefit them as they leave this place. And then we're big on service. Every weekend we have service trips that go out into a variety of areas here on Long Island, from soup kitchens to beach cleanups to train cleanups to working in veterans' homes. There's no shortage of opportunities to take those character lessons and put them into practice to serve other people, which is something that we emphasize a lot here. And so I'd like to transition to the next slide and talking about leadership here at Stony Brook, because one of the great ways that you can put character into action is in one's leadership. And that is where we really see a lot of the character virtues come alive and come on display. So I want to talk about leadership, 3 components of leadership at Stony Brook. And I'll talk about the actual opportunities that we give students to practice and exercise leadership, and then you'll hear from some of our leaders. But at the end of the day, there are really kind of 3 components that make up the heart of our leadership program. And the first is that we really stress meaningful leadership. A lot of times maybe schools have titles for students, but they don't really get to do much. We believe that for leadership to have impact, it has to be meaningful. And so we actually put a lot of faith in our students and give them chances to make significant impact on the campus through the activities that they develop, through initiatives that they may spearhead and carry through. But leadership here has to be meaningful. So for example, we have students who do work job, which is one of the components of our program where students are actually engaged in making the Stony Brook School run on a day-to-day basis. And if we don't have them, we're in trouble. So in the dining hall, for example, students pre-COVID, and we're looking to get back to that, they'll serve food, they'll clean up, wash dishes. And look, if those things don't get done, the community suffers. And so it's a real opportunity for students to have meaningful leadership roles here on the campus that we give them and have high expectations and come alongside and support them in these efforts. I mentioned servanthood here, and that is really important in our leadership program. We want to be sure that we are teaching students how to be how to be servant leaders, how to really get up under people, to serve them, to disadvantage themselves in order to advantage others. And certainly one of the ways in which that happens here on this campus is time. Time is at a premium, but when students are giving their time in order to make people, to lift people's experience, to bless them, to encourage them, well, that's a real meaningful sacrifice. That's servant leadership for young people. And so we're constantly teaching that lesson to make sure that people understand leadership is not just the exercising of power. It is indeed the opportunity to make one's life better, another's life better. And that's what we emphasize. And then, of course, results focused. We really look at, okay, what are we accomplishing in our leadership? What are we doing? What is the impact on the community? And those are really important things for us to study, again, connected to that meaningful nature If it's meaningful, they're going to be results. So what are the results of your initiatives? What are the results of your leadership? That's what we'd like to talk about. So next slide, we'll talk about, will show us just what some of these opportunities are. So prefects here on campus, those are our senior leaders. 13, I believe, is the number that we have right now of prefects, and they are selected in a combination between faculty and their peers, and they assist significantly in various leadership roles on the campus. So for example, we have dorm prefects. They help the dorm head, the adult faculty member dorm head, run the dorm. They often are the eyes and ears for the faculty member and can help organize and make sure that the culture of the dorm is going well. It's very significant. We also have admissions prefects who help organize tours and work with the admissions department, and different components down the line of important programs at our school where these senior leaders are kind of the front line of these, from a student perspective, of these areas. Also, we have dorm councils who assist in, again, helping in the culture of the dorms. Dorm council members, there'll be several of them. Each one will take a night during our study hours and will assist in the maintenance of that time where kids are having dedicated study time, but these dorm council members are walking up and down the halls and making sure that everybody's on task and on track. And it's a great way to exercise leadership and enforce the culture, the good culture that we want to produce in our dorms. And it's often best done by students themselves. And so that's an opportunity if you're on the residential side. And then class presidents who help organize class activities, class fundraisers, help select the class gift. These folks are really involved in the social fabric and the service opportunities that various classes have. So there are lots of different ways in which we give students the opportunity to plug in, exercise real leadership, and make an impact on this campus. Develop this culture, the student culture, the campus culture, in a way that's beneficial and that isn't top down in terms of administrative or faculty fiats, but actually participatory leadership in concert with the adults on the campus to really produce the kind of environment that enables folks to flourish. So that's it in a nutshell in terms of the opportunities that exist for students. But again, now we want to hear from the students themselves. So we have two of our special senior leaders here this evening, Tiffany Akinyoede from Lagos, Nigeria, and then Caroline Helmer from Chicago, Illinois. We'll talk about their experience. Tiffany is the head prefect for equity and inclusion, our prefect for equity and inclusion. And then Caroline Helmer is our chaplain prefect. She oversees the spiritual life, the student spiritual life with the help of Dr. Tejan. So without further ado, let me turn it over to Tiffany.
So my name is Tiffany. I'm currently a senior at the Stony Brook School. And my experience with leadership, spirituality, and character at Stony Brook has honestly been really astounding, especially given that I've only been here a year. I came into the school in 11th grade. I came from Nigeria. It was a completely different community, a different environment. But one thing I noticed was that everyone leading encourages you to step up and lead too. You're always like gonna be offered opportunities to lead. My first encounter with leadership was actually in the dorm when I was offered the opportunity to be a dorm council member midway through the year. And that was really encouraging for me because I had watched the dorm councils organize events and make everyone in the dorm feel welcome. And it was something that I wanted to do and wanted to be a part of. And you're never left out of these things. I think one thing here especially is that everyone is made a leader. Like there's nobody that's just idle and just a student here. Everyone is a leader and everyone has something that they're in charge of and something that they can take pride in, which is really important in not just developing character, but like understanding yourself and understanding the different things that make you who you are and make you such a good leader. In terms of spirituality, my first encounter with spirituality was actually Driven, which is one of the events that Dr. Tejan explained earlier. And it was honestly really beautiful. I think it was probably why I ended up becoming a Christian Life team member now. I remember we were outside and we were singing songs, there was a fire lit, and I just remembered it being welcoming, nothing imposing. It was all anyone who would like to come in, and it was honestly beautiful. And as a Christian leadership team member, I've also been given the opportunity to do scripture readings and share sermons at our Christian events and chapels, and it's honestly been really a blessing, and it's really helped me find myself and find the things that I enjoy doing. And I feel like once you're trusted with all of these huge tasks or little tasks, it makes you want to perform them well. And so you get into the habit of doing things well, and leadership is like ingrained into you. It's honestly very beautiful here. In 11th grade, when I had just came in, I also became an executive member on the Black Student Union. And for me, honestly, that was really interesting because it was completely different from anything I had ever experienced. It was all of us working together as a team. We did have our presidents, but we were all involved. It wasn't like hierarchical. And it was honestly just organizing events for the school and seeing how people reacted to them and how people enjoyed themselves and seeing the things that I contributed to and how the effect that it had on other people. Honestly, I found that um, really heartwarming and it made me want to do more. And so I did apply to be equity and inclusion prefect at the end of 11th grade, and I got it. And being equity and inclusion prefect this year has honestly been really great. Uh, I've been working with the presidents of the student unions, and I think it's given me a completely different perspective on leadership because usually when people think of leadership, you think of one leader and then everyone else is like, I guess, a follower, but it's really different here because I'm working with leaders, and so we work together to like make things happen. We're put in charge of the Heritage Months. We just had Hispanic Heritage Month pass, and Native American Heritage Month just yesterday. And it was honestly being given the opportunity to just do everything and like being trusted to do it was really encouraging, and it made us want to perform everything to the best of our abilities. Another thing that I've noticed built my character was being in the Bare Necessities team, which is a mental health team that we have on campus. And I think more than leadership, it really helped my character because you tend to start looking out for people and making sure that everyone is okay and making sure that you observe the climate in school and like you find ways to like help people de-stress and make everyone calm down in the midst of like all the academic stress that there may be. And it's honestly it's just beautiful seeing all the things that you can do as an individual while still being in school and like getting your academics done. And it's been so huge having all these leadership positions because it definitely is character in action. I would definitely say that this is not just being a dictator. This is like understanding the people around you and communicating with people and like un getting to know each other and like understand people different perspectives. As a prefect board, we also host like Meet Me Halfways where students come and we have a topic we talk about. Um, and they're usually slightly controversial and people bring in their ideas and you get to see people and like understand people and know their different perspectives, know their backgrounds, their cultures, and it gives you this understanding that the people you're leading are people just like you, and it encourages you to lead them in the most kind and caring way as possible. Another leadership position that I had was on a steering committee member on the Model UN group, And for me, that has been really wonderful because Model UN is something that I've always enjoyed doing, and introducing other people to it has been a great part of my year so far. And finally, the another huge aspect of character and action is being a Restoration Council member. Um, and I think being a leader and being acknowledged for your leadership and your character and being given the opportunity to help people and guide students who may have gone on the wrong track has honestly been really great for me because you get to empathize with people and you honestly just see that we're all connected and we're all the same, and you get to see the good traits in people, and like you help to bring up other leaders, like generations of leaders behind you. And I think the leadership at Stony Brook is really special because it has helped me particularly. I would definitely say that it's built my character, and I know myself more than I did when I came a year ago because of all the leadership opportunities I've been offered and because of all of the things that I've been trusted with.
Great. Caroline.
Hi, everyone. My name is Caroline Helmer, and I'm excited to talk to you this evening about my experience here at Stony Brook. I have truly found that Stony Brook is a place where God resides in a very powerful way. I happen to be a person of faith and have found God significantly during my time here, but the great thing about Stony Brook is that faith is not forced upon anyone during their time here, and it is also a place to explore. I was at a different Christian high school before Stony Brook, and I also came in 11th grade, like Tiffany. And ever since coming here, I have felt free to ask questions and really get curious about what I believe. And like Dr. Tejan mentioned earlier, not just examine what I believe, but also why I believe it. I also have friends and peers of all different faiths, beliefs, cultures, and backgrounds, and we all love and respect each other deeply, which I think is very unique to Stony Brook. And we are all taught to do that, and we all value each other in a way that allows us to do that. I learn so much from my friends every day, and they challenge me to think about things from a new perspective or to see things in a new way, which has helped me to not only see issues and be able to talk about them in a balanced way, but also be able to think about how these issues impact the world around us. Um, as was mentioned earlier, there are tons of opportunities to get involved on campus spiritually and with leadership, driven chapel councils and leadership positions. But I have also found that spirituality, character, and leadership can come up in having casual conversations about big topics with my classmates and learning more and more about them each day. Stony Brook, as mentioned earlier, has a big emphasis on character, and the motto being character before career as well. In all of our classes, chapels, and conversations, we are encouraged to see that there is more to life than just making it to the top of the ladder. I found personally at Stony Brook that we are taught to really see people, see them as a whole person, not just as their achievements or as their background describes them, but as they are and who their character is, and to truly value them. I think we're also taught to realize that our character and our standards are valuable, and they're precious. And I've personally found that we are taught to not compromise these things for anything, for any reason. Stony Brook holds us to a very high standard that we are all able to meet, and we are taught to meet in a gracious and loving way. Um, During our time at Stony Brook, we are formed into servant leaders that are truly concerned for the well-being of others. And we are taught to think of others before ourselves. And it doesn't happen right away. It definitely happens gradually and is a process, but suddenly one day you'll find that cleaning the lunch table isn't a chore, but becomes a serving opportunity. And we begin to have the desire in our hearts to help each other and to love each other in our day-to-day lives with big things and even small things. I found that at SBS, we encourage each other and lift each other up as well. I remember last year when leadership positions were coming out, and I received the leadership position that I applied for, and one of my really good friends did not. And we both live in the same dorm, and she, I remember, came running down the hallway to give me a hug and to tell me how proud she was of me and how excited she was for me. And that really struck me. And I've remembered that moment since. And there are tons of other examples like that at Stony Brook. We strive to lift each other up, even if we didn't necessarily get what we wanted, but we truly care for each other in that way. And we are taught to value character in our academic, personal, and spiritual lives.
Great. Just a reminder that you can type your questions using the Q&A button at the bottom of your screen. And while you're typing in your questions, and to provide you with some additional time, I'll highlight a few things. If you want to follow up directly with Mr. Crane or Dr. Tejan, you could find their email addresses on the screen. And during this panel discussion, we plan to focus on questions pertaining to spirituality, character, and leadership. It's important to note that we covered some other topics in our previous open houses. And I encourage you to take a look at the recordings on our school website. And those can be found in the admissions section under virtual campus visits. And now we can get started with our panel discussion. So it looks like the first question is, my child used to believe in Jesus when he was young, and however, he's questioning about the existence of God and Jesus, and I'm wondering if this is a typical behavior of a teenager. And so, Dr. Tejan, do you want to start?
Well, that's a really interesting question, and I'm not sure I'm not sure I'm an expert on the average teenager. I only have one myself. It's a small sample size, but I would say this is a good place for someone who has serious questions to ask those questions. I mean, I as a professional philosopher, I can relate to your child. I question things too. I remember getting in arguments with my own father, who was a minister, and disagreeing with his interpretation of Scripture. And so, I would not be alarmed. I would say you have a very inquisitive and, a young child, a young man, young woman who is interested in truth. And to me, that is a beautiful thing. And I would say also that our approach here to education is to encourage that sort of question and provide support in that quest.
And Mr. Crane, did you want to add anything?
Sure. I mean, I have 4 children, and then of course the privilege of being around 440 other teenagers. And the faith journey is often not linear. There are those moments where we have deep questions and doubts about what it is that we believe. And what you find is when you really go to the roots of those questions, if you pursue them and they become answered, that faith muscle is exercised in a way that never would have been if it weren't for the doubts and for the questions. And so I tell folks not to be afraid of their doubts, but to be honest about them and to pursue them. And so I would say to you that there is great hope for your child in this journey that he or she is on, and do not despair or lose hope. I think prayer is really important. Praying for your child is one of the best things you can do. So on that quest, I would be in prayer and not give up.
Great. And another question that came up is, does SBS hold to a particular statement of faith? Dr. Tejan, do you want to tackle that one?
Um, so I guess I'm not sure if the question is for the people who attend or for the folks who teach here. And Mr. Crane could probably speak to the details a little bit better than I can. But as far as those who teach, we are committed. We sort of agree to certain basic Christian commitments, which are shared by people from all sorts of Christian backgrounds. And so we have teachers at Stony Brook that range from Catholic to Baptist to Lutheran to Episcopalian to Methodist. I don't know if I left anything out, but the whole gamut. But as we said, students are not required. There are some Christian schools or Christian colleges that might require a family or a student to sign a statement of faith, and we certainly don't do that.
Yeah. So we have what are called our platform or principles, 7 founding principles that are, I would say, consistent throughout historic Orthodox Christianity, which can be agreed to by all the different denominations that Dr. Tejan just mentioned. We do hold, again, to a Orthodox view of Scripture. We believe that the Bible is the inspired Word of God, and we hold to that. But one of the key things that the Bible teaches is to be loving and to love your neighbor as yourself. And so I think often when you hear people talking about Christianity, there's this fear that it's this harsh, judgmental, exclusionary religion, which is really the opposite of what it is designed to be and what we seek to practice. But if you're looking for a statement of faith, the 7 principles, that would be what we would all as faculty adhere to.
Got it. And next we have, how would the panelists say the mixing of different faiths at the school sort of works out, and referring to the mixing of maybe Christians, Muslims, Hindus, and Jewish students, and those that don't have religion. Mr. Crane, would you start, and then we'll kind of have maybe all of the panelists and especially the students address this as well.
Yeah, I'd love to hear their perspectives, but I just think that what we're talking about when we talk about different religions is every religion is organized around the big questions of life. They're seeking to answer those questions. And so for us, we find that that conversation is a rich conversation. We certainly come at it from a point of view as Christians, but we really want to be in dialogue. And that's where we see the beauty of the different faiths represented in our student body really add to the richness of the conversation and give us a chance to think deeply about our faiths in this kind of multi-faith context in the student body. I think it really gives us a chance to strengthen our own faith and to be aware of what different people believe. And then Caroline or Tiffany, I don't know if you want to say anything about that.
One way that I have personally found all of the faiths to mix together in a really cool way is in faith and culture class. Last trimester, I was in the world religions section of faith and culture, which is in the class, we go through each of the world religions or a chunk of the world religions, and we have to read chapters on them and have quizzes on them. And we research one and do a presentation on it. And it was really interesting for me having some of my peers have some of those different religions or believe or consider themselves as part of those different religions, and they really challenged my perspective on what I believe, and we had super open discussions and dialogues about it. And I was amazed by how everyone respected each other's different viewpoints, could lovingly challenge or ask a question, but also we could come together at the end of the day and love each other for who we are, and accept each other and realize that we belong at this place, no matter what we believe.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that. I'd say that from my personal experience, I would like to say that there's no judgment on this campus. I think everybody has a mutual respect for everyone. We all know that everybody is in different stages of their religious religious journey, and some people might have chosen to not pursue a religious journey at all. And I don't think there's any judgment or any stigma attached to that. I think we understand that we're all individuals and we all have our separate choices. And I think that really helps in making our community what it is and how like how connected we all are, because we know that it's not our call to make for we don't decide another person's religion or another person's faith journey, and everybody's journey is different. And I definitely agree with Caroline that we do have open conversations about it. I remember for uh one night we had a driven walk, and the question was, how has God worked and how have you experienced God working in your life? And driven is open for everyone, so definitely not everyone was a Christian there. And my partner for that particular walk um was not sure whether she believed in God or not. And I remember it was a beautiful conversation. We stayed after driven for like an hour, just continuing, like just talking about like how do we know, and like it was honestly conversations that you wouldn't expect children to have. We had, and it was beautiful. There was like no, it wasn't harsh or like angry. It was calm and it was like understanding. And I think that's the way that we all are here.
All right. Any more questions? All right. So that concludes our panel discussion.
Thanks, everyone.
And now we'll move on to the how to apply page and the application process. And so what I'd advise is that I'd encourage all of our attendees, when you get a chance, to visit the website and view this page online. And really, because there's a lot of detail on this page, the first step of the process is our inquiry form. And actually, if you're ready to apply, you can actually skip step one and skip right to step two, which is the online application. And Stony Brook School does have two options for the application. There's the Stony Brook application, and then there's also a common application called the SAO. And all students are required to interview, and all of those interviews are being conducted via WebEx. So they're being conducted virtually. And then we do require testing this year. And so students will take the SSAT. And we also accept the ISEE, the PSAT, as well as the SAT and ACT. And then for those students for which English is not their first language, we do require the TOEFL. And there are some other options as well in case the TOEFL is not available in your area. And so we do also accept the IELTS exam and Duolingo. And in addition, there are transcripts that are required. It's the transcript for the current school year, as well as the 2 previous school years. And teacher recommendations. So we do require a recommendation from the current English teacher and current math teacher. And then for those families that may be applying for financial aid, parents will be required to complete a parent's financial statement, as well as the application, and send financial documents as well. And then now we'll move on to next steps. And so we encourage you to stay connected with SBS. And just in case, if you haven't gotten a chance to fill out an inquiry form, we do encourage you to do that now. And then we definitely want to stay in touch. And there are two options. You can send us an email at admissions@sbs.org, or you can give us a phone call. Within perhaps a week or so, you should receive a survey in your inbox. And so we're always looking for ways to improve and get better. And so we would be grateful if you could take a few minutes to complete that survey. And then don't forget to follow us on social media. And you can find our social media challenge, our social media channels on the website. So the SBS homepage at the bottom of the landing page, you can find that information. And then next week, we will be hosting another fantastic virtual open house. The topic will be campus life. And so definitely we would love for you to join us next week, Wednesday, December 8th, at the same time, 8 p.m. For that event. And in the chat, you should see a link if you want to register right now. And next, we will take a few minutes to answer some questions about the application process. And I will be joined by my colleague, Sharice Welsh. And so certainly, if you've got questions, we'd love to answer those for you. And so one of the questions is kind of what's the ratio of day students to boarding students? And so, yeah, Stony Brook School is about 50-50, boarding and day. And those numbers, what do the actual numbers look like? It's about 220 boarding students and 220 or so day students. There's 7 dorms on campus, 3 for boys, 4 for girls. And then another question, who is the financial aid personnel? And so I guess I'm interpreting that as which individuals work on financial aid. And so that includes myself as well as Ms. Welsh. And you can find our information on the website under admissions. And another question, how does someone apply for mid-year? And I would encourage you to either give us a call on the office number or send an email to admissions@sbs.org along with a transcript for either if your child is thinking about mid-year for a high school student, maybe their high school transcript. Certainly if they're applying or thinking about mid-year entry for a 7th or 8th grader, you could send us a transcript for middle school, and we'll pass that along to our academic dean and see if we have room in those classes, and then get back to you.
I'll jump in and answer one of the questions regarding the percentage of international students at the school. And so it's just under about a third. So it's about 31% of our students would be considered international.
Great. And there was a question, and just so everyone knows, because I'm sure this topic may be on the minds of others, is a vaccine required to go to your school? And so no is the answer to that question, not at this time. It is strongly encouraged that all of our students be vaccinated, but it is not a requirement. And it's also important to note that all of our faculty and staff are required to be vaccinated, or they are subject to weekly testing for COVID. I think, yeah, it looks like we've answered all the questions, and we certainly thank all of our attendees for joining us for this virtual open house, and definitely appreciate all of your great questions, and we look forward to seeing you next week, Wednesday. All right, thanks, and have a great evening.